Hi, my name is Kristin and this is Kristin Kraves Books. In my last video, I decided to put together a guide to help you build your ultimate TBR. I broke it all down into different categories like witches, vampires, monsters, dark academia, and more, and gave you recommendations for each of those categories. So if you want to see all my recommendations, I will link that in the cards above and down below in my description, so check that out because I had so much fun putting that video together. I love doing recommendation videos, but I especially love doing them in the fall. So now I decided to take all those categories and treat myself to creating my own ultimate fall TBR using that guide. And now there are a ton of books on this list. Really, it's a way for me to just have a visual of all of the possibilities that I can choose from. And really my goal is just to read 1 or 2 books within each of these categories so that I really do create the ultimate TBR for myself and actually get to the books that I want. But within some categories I have like 5 books. I'm not going to read all those, but these are the ones that are calling to me at the moment, and really it's a way to put them on your radar as well. So we're going to start with my favorite category, of course, witches, and the first one is one that is a witchy rom-com, which I've said this before, I love, and I expect them to be cheesy and ridiculous. It's so funny when I go on Goodreads, every cheesy rom-com I have read and loved or is on my TBR has like a 3.5 something or a 3.7 on Goodreads because they're just not for everybody and they're kind of over the top. Like I can see why they are not going to be the books for everyone, but I know what to expect from them. And one that has the 3.5 on Goodreads is Hex Appeal by Kate Johnson. Now this was a cover buy for me. I looked at this, knew immediately that it was a witchy rom-com, and I grabbed it. And the tagline says it's just a bunch of hocus pocus, which is perfect. I'm wearing my Sanderson shirt as we speak. Now I had a friend who read this who is also a fan of witchy rom-coms. Like that is one of their ways that we bond through our reading, and they said that this was just an okay meh story, but they gave it an entire extra star just for the magical house, which is another thing that we share in our reading tastes. I love a magical house, especially if it's sentient and a character and has feelings and personality, and apparently the magical house in this one is excellent. And this book just takes place in this house where all of these witches happen to live, and they're all magical, and our main character tries to leave but ends up coming back, and I think she has a slow burn romance with the landlord. So that sounds fun to me, but it's good to have the right expectations for myself going into that one. This next one is one that I have had on my TBR shelf for ages and has been recommended to me so many times, especially from the people who read my blog, which I don't talk about this a lot. I do have a blog, and the audience on there is so different from my YouTube audience, which I just love. I love that, but one that they always tell me I should pick up is A Witch in Time, because they know that though I love contemporary witchy rom-com, something else I like in witchy stories is when they lean a little bit more historical, and that is definitely this one. And I think even if you are not a fan of witches, this one might appeal to you. If you like following characters who live many lifetimes, this could be a good one for you. It follows a woman whose mom accidentally puts a curse on her where she has to relive this tragic love affair, or it's like a really toxic relationship throughout all of her lifetimes, and then the demon who is in charge of maintaining this curse is actually in love with her through all of the lifetimes. So it starts in 1895 and it ends up in 2012, and we follow all the lives she leads in between that time. So I think that this could be really beautiful and definitely a slow burn, and I do love a good relationship with a demon. It doesn't matter what format it's in, even if it's like a more literary historical. I just like that idea. This next one I put on my TBR for a very specific reason, which we will get to in the vampire section, but this book is called The Modern Girl's Guide to Magic, which looks really, really cute. This is on KU if you're interested. I think it'll be a quick read. I like all of these books that are a blank's guide to blank and blank. They always seem to work for me. All of my favorite books have that kind of title format. I don't know why that is, but apparently that is just something I need to pay attention to, because anything that with that title works out for me. And this is a witchy romance, and it has one of my favorite tropes. Something that I discovered I like is when we're following a witch who cannot control her powers, because it just leads to some hilarious moments, and that is in this one. So I'm really looking forward to giving that a try. One that I've had for a while now that I think I'm really gonna like, and I have it on audio, I don't know why I haven't listened to it yet, is Bad Witch Burning by Jessica Lewis. And this is obviously a witchy story, and it follows a girl who is able to raise the dead, and I think she's actually like getting money doing this for her family. She is making deals with people to raise their loved ones or raise people they want to raise from the dead, and they're paying her for it. So I think that is probably a dangerous game to be playing. It says that it's a witchy story full of black girl magic as one girl's dark ability to summon the dead offers her a chance at a new life while revealing to her an even darker future. Sounds so good. And then the last witchy book I have, I know I will be reading because Becky was kind enough to ask me to guest host for October for her witchy book club. And the book that we are reading is Slewfoot by Brom. Slewfoot is one that again has been recommended to me so many times. I have seen it on so many favorites lists over the past couple years since it came out. Everybody seems to adore it. I think it's on the darker side of witchy. It does look more historical, something I would like. For as often as I hear about it, I don't know what it's about, but you know I'm gonna read it because of this book club and it's one that I have been interested in anyways. So yeah, I hope to see you in the live sprints for that one. All right, moving on to vampires. The first one we have is Vampires of El Norte. This is by Isabel Canas, and she wrote The Haciendas, which is another one that I really want to get to eventually, but I will probably read this one first. A, I have the audiobook. B, it's vampires. So I have been hearing mixed things about this one a little bit, but those who love it really love it, and I think I will fall in that category. It follows these two characters who were best friends growing up, and I think they were sort of in love with each other, and then there is a vampire-like creature that comes and attacks their community. He thinks that she died during this attack and runs away, and she thinks that he just abandoned her, and then in their adulthood they reunite and they have to come together to destroy this force. I think that's the basic premise of this, and it does really just sound like something that I'm going to appreciate. You know how I said I love witchy rom-coms? I'm seeing a trend where we're getting more and more vampire rom-coms, which I don't really think is a thing that we really had in the past. But if that is where publishing is going, I am all about it. So the first one I have is My Roommate is a Vampire. This is by Jenna Levine. Another one I've been hearing mixed things about, but I think in the same way that I hear mixed things about witchy rom-coms, I think they're for a very specific audience, and you have to know the tropes and like just embrace the ridiculousness of it all. So we're following a girl who is looking for affordable housing, and she ends up renting this room for really cheap, and she has a roommate who is very polite and a gentleman and all that stuff, but kind of odd. And we quickly learn that he's indeed a vampire and they have a romance. I'm into it. And then the other witchy rom-com I have on here is actually the sequel to The Modern Girl's Guide to Magic. So now you understand why I put that on there, because the sequel is called How to Fake Date a Vampire. Two of my buzzwords right there in the title. I love a fake dating story. You add a vampire in there, I'm gonna read it. Simple as that. And the one that I was really hoping to be in the middle of right now, but I have to finish a few things first, is Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Krista Broadbent. I have loved this world that Krista Broadbent has created in the World of Nyaxia series. The first book being The Serpent and the Wings of Night, and then the novella after that is Six Scorched Roses. So Slaying the Vampire Conqueror is part of that world, but it's a complete standalone. You don't have to have read any of the other books in the series to get to this one. So I honestly know nothing about it except it's set in this world, and that's all I need. But I guess I should also put the sequel to Serpents on here. Star-Cursed King, Ashes of the Star-Cursed King, I think that's what it's called. So that is a potential one as well. And then I will have read everything in this world, I think, because I think this world is so amazing. How many times can I say world? But I just love it. So there you have it. Next up we have monsters. Now, I'm very new to monsters in the romance genre, and Hannah from Hannah Blackwell is hosting a readathon in October. It's 10 days. There's a bingo board. You can be as competitive or as relaxed with it as you want, which is perfect for me. And I think for that readathon, I want to read cozy monster romances, because the readathon's called Monster Mash and the point is to read monster books. But I think I prefer the cozy end of monster romances, as we know with my love for the Mead Mishap series. But I'm still researching for that. Some that I have my eye on are Sweet Vengeance. I talked about this in my fantasy romance TBR. This sounds so good, and as I said previously, I love a romance with a demon, so our main character is on like a revenge quest. I think she might summon this demon, or somehow she comes into contact with him, and he is in love with her vengeful side. So I love that he loves that about her, and apparently this is super steamy. It's on the shorter side, so that is a potential. It's the first book in a series, but the second book isn't out yet as far as I can tell. And then the next one is Green-Eyed Monster by Elsie Winters. Actually, as I'm filming this, Stuff Your Kindle Day is happening, and I'm hoping I have this out before the 23rd so you can check that out, because it's I know it's Stuff Your Kindle Day, but it's actually 3 days this time. And a book in this series, Leviathan Song by Elsie Winters, is one of the free books you can get. I screamed when I saw that. Even though it's on KU, it's still nice to have the ebook on there and know it's not gonna go away. So Green-Eyed Monster is actually the prequel to that. It's the beginning of this entire story. It's only 45 pages. It's obviously a short story, but I do want to read everything in there, and it's called Green-Eyed Monster with a big monster face on the cover, so it's perfect for this. I have to look more into the series because I know a lot of people like it. I'm not sure if the other books follow monsters, but if you do know, let me know, because maybe what will happen is I will just fall in love with this book and read the whole series for the readathon instead. We will see. Not to bring up the Mead Mishap series again, like I do in every video. This will be my second time in this video, but I'm always looking for something that gives me the same vibe, and something that really does look like that just from this cover is Muscles and Monsters by Ashley Bennett. There are quite a few books in this series. They are on audio as well, which would be nice to have some audiobooks to read during the readathon. And yeah, she's obviously in a relationship with a werewolf or a wolf shifter of some kind, and it looks cute. He's eating a cupcake. So yeah, that is something I'm gonna love. I just know it. And then to move away from the romances for a second, because I do like the idea of reading monster books that aren't romances. They're just harder for me to find in the circles that I watch on BookTube. So if you have more recommendations of non-romance monster books, I'd love to hear about them. But this is the second time Jessica Lewis appears on this list, and this is her newest book called Monstrous. And I just have this feeling that Jessica Lewis probably writes the YA horror that will appeal to me. So if I love Bad Witch Burning, I have Monstrous available for me as well. I think it's on Scribd as well, so that'll be good. I've been so excited to film this part of this video because I have so many cozy fantasies / mysteries on my TBR. It was hard to narrow it down, but this is the mood that I'm in for this year. So I have a feeling I will get to most of these. The first one is When the Crow's Away by Orly Wallace. I recommended the first book in the series, In a Company of Witches, in my last video, and this is the sequel. And there's only 2 books out right now, which is kind of sad because I think I would love to continue on with it. Mass market paperback, short. It is a cozy mystery that happens to have witches. So a bonus witch recommendation there for you. And the first book dealt a lot with grief. I think this one will be a little bit more lighthearted because we got touches of maybe a romance happening in the first book, and I'm hoping that plays out more in this one. But we're following a witch who happens to be able to see ghosts, and her husband passes away and she moves back in with her aunts who own a bed and breakfast. And the first one, somebody dies, she gets wrapped up in the investigation. I'm sure somebody dies in this one as well, as it is a cozy mystery. It says the ghost of a chocolatier believes he was murdered, and it's up to young witch Bryn to use her magical gifts and old-fashioned sleuthing skills to find out how he really met his bitter end. Okay, that's a little bit different. He's already dead, which makes sense because she can see ghosts. And then another sequel I have is Manner of Life and Death by Kim M. Watt. This is a tried and true cozy mystery series. There just happens to be dragons that can talk and have personalities in this. Suppose that these women within a women's institute and this detective who kind of gets wrapped up with this community. And I think in this one, somebody's found dead in a sauna and there's a storm that keeps everybody trapped. So we will see how it goes, but I really loved the first 2 books in the series. I adore all these characters, especially the dragons. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing on. There are quite a few books in the series as well. Now we have one that was actually written by a fellow booktuber, and this is a second story by J.A. Collignan. And this is a male-male romance. It does take place on the seaside, so it's probably better for the summertime, but I just didn't get a chance to get to it in the summer, and I desperately want to read it, especially since I think the sequel comes out in either late October or in November, and I want to have read this one first. And I know that there's a bookstore. It all started when their eyes met over a drawn dagger. I love that first line. And yeah, so these 2 end up buying a bookstore together, and it just looks really sweet. Again, it's on the shorter side and just exactly what I'm in the mood for right now. Does this cover not scream cozy fantasy? I think I am just gonna love every second of reading this with a cup of tea, since this is called a Cuda Tea. And this is by Casey Blair. I think I'm gonna love drinking a cup of tea under a blanket. Hopefully it's a rainy day and just devouring this book. It's the first book in the Tea Princess Chronicles. It follows a princess who is exiled, and she ends up opening a tea shop on the outskirts of town. So yeah, I do like a good royal story. I do like an exiled princess. Make it a cozy fantasy. Sounds like something a little bit different for me. So Black Halloween is happening again in October, and Brie just did the announcement video. I will link that down below. It was amazing. The map that she created is next level. There's a lot of different steps to this, but I feel like it's pretty accessible and it'll be a fun one to do. And there are a bunch of buddy reads, and the one that I decided that I want to prioritize this time is a cozy mystery, one that I hadn't heard about, and it's called The Plot is Murder by V.M. Burns. Typically, I'm drawn to cozy mysteries that have cats on the cover, but I will take these two cute little poodles. Obviously, there's like a library here. I'm sure it follows a lot of the same plot points as a typical cozy mystery, but I'm into it. I'm excited to have like a group of people to buddy read a cozy with, because those aren't typically the books that you see getting read in groups or for buddy reads or book clubs and stuff. So I think that'll be a good one to read with everybody. And then the last one I have for this category, I think you probably just call this a cozy mystery, is Shady Hollow by Juno Black. But the characters in it are woodland creatures, so does that make it fantasy or something a little bit different? I think I'm just going to be charmed by this. This says it's the first book in a Shady Hollow series in which we are introduced to the village of Shady Hollow, a place where woodland creatures live together in harmony until a curmudgeonly toad turns up dead and the local reporter has to solve the case. So cute. Okay, haunted houses. The first one will be a reread for me. It is House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. This one, our poll for the Book Checkout Book Club book for October, you all voted. This was the winner and I'm thrilled, especially because I just read the sequel couple weeks ago or like a week ago and I can't stop thinking about it. Absolutely loved it, but it felt so different from what I remember book one being that I am desperate to reread book one just so I can compare them with a fresher mind. This is a book that I recommended in my last video, so I won't go into what it's about, but yeah, I'm excited to be rereading that one with you all, and we will have a live show discussion sometime in November. And I just think it's a perfect October read, and I can't wait for anybody who hasn't read it to experience it for the first time. Another one that has been on my radar for ages is A Spite House by Johnny Compton. When this first came out, it was getting a lot of buzz. I love the idea of like a spite house, a house that somebody builds just to piss off their neighbors and stuff, just to get back at somebody. When I was in university, I actually lived near a spite house, which I thought was really cool. So I think we just follow this family who moves into this spite house and everything that begins to happen. So it kind of sounds like your traditional haunted house story, but the fact that it's actually a spite house gives it that little twist. A book that's not even out yet, but I have an ALC of that comes out on October 3rd is A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand. Apparently this is the only authorized book set in the same world as The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Like whoever is in charge of, what do they call that? Her foundation or whatever has approved this book, and it takes place in the same house. And it just follows these people, I think she's like a college student or something, and her girlfriend end up in this house that is in The Haunting of Hill House. It sounds confusing, but yeah, I have the audio, so hopefully I'll get to that before it comes out on the 3rd. But I'm running out of time. I don't know where September has gone. A book that I saw on Instagram, and I can't believe I hadn't heard of this before because it sounds so good, and I instantly added it to my TBR. I think there are 15 books in the series or something, but the first one is Haunting Charlie, and this is by Wendy Wang. Obviously it's a haunted house story, but it's also a witchy story, so another witchy recommendation here. I think it's again about a witch who can see the dead people, which is obviously a trope that attracts me and is something that I'm interested in reading more of, so that looks perfect. And then last is one that my friend Sarah from Brighton Bookish put on my radar. One of the books that was in that poll for the Book Checkout October book was The Goblin Empire by Catherine Addison, and we were all talking about this book, I think backstage, and Sarah mentioned that she was actually coming out with a horror novella that she writes under a different name. Now, what is the name that she uses for this? Sarah Monette. So Sarah Monette is actually Catherine Addison. In case you didn't know, I didn't know this, and this is like 150 pages or less. And what I appreciate about this one is it is technically a haunted house story, but instead of a house, it's a haunted museum. And I think that our main character is in charge of collecting artifacts and stuff, so I could be really into that, and I appreciate that it's on the shorter side, and it will actually be my first time reading anything by this author. Okay, sci-fi horror. This is the one I always struggle with because I am just not as aware of what's out there, so I always like when you guys recommend me stuff. But Mira Grant is my go-to author for this subgenre, my favorite subgenre of horror. And I feel like I've read all of her novellas at this point, or all the ones that I have access to. So it's time for me to get into her bigger books, her longer series. Now, Feed is one that I have seen for years. I feel like that cover is kind of iconic at this point, but it was never one I thought I'd pick up because I'm just not that much of a zombie person. I never watched Walking Dead. The only zombie media that I remember actually liking was Warm Bodies back in the day, which is hilarious, and that was cheesy, but I kind of loved it. So zombies have never been on my radar. But now that I'm a huge Mira Grant stan and want to read everything she's ever written, it's time for me to give Feed a chance. And it is on the longer side, so I am excited about it though, because I just love her. Another favorite subgenre of mine is underwater horror, and one that is always recommended when I talk about that is Luminous Dead by Caitlin Sterling, which is also sci-fi, but to me that just screams like the underwater horror. I want that in the summertime, so I'm gonna save that one. But I am excited that she is releasing a new book in October, and it's called Last to Leave the Room. And I think that this is about a room that has like multi-dimensions and stuff in some kind of horrific way. I'm just gonna go into it blind, but yeah, the cover is kind of creepy, and I'm curious to see how sci-fi it leans, because multi-dimensions and that kind of stuff isn't typically what I lean into when I'm talking about sci-fi horror, but I'm definitely open to trying it. And the last one is The Wishing Pool and Other Stories by Tanana Reeve Dew, which will be my first book from her, and I think starting with the short story collection might be a good idea, and I do have this one on audio, and I was really excited to see, I think at least 2 of the stories in here are sci-fi horror. I have heard about her for years. People love her stuff, but a lot of her books are big. Like I was looking at maybe doing The Good House for the haunted house category, but that book is a big one and I just don't think I'm ready for it. But if I read this short story collection and love her stuff, I will put that one on my TBR for the future, and I will explore more of her backlist because I know there's a lot out there. Next up we have slashers, and again I love a YA slasher, but I have a hard time finding them. I feel like I've read a lot of them at this point. One that I want to try that just came out is You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, and this is one that takes place at a summer camp. So it's another one I should have got to in the summer and just didn't happen, and still desperately want to read. It follows a girl who is a counselor at this camp where they do kind of murder mysteries, but then at this particular occasion the murder is real, and it just sounds like it is exactly what I love in these kind of YA slashers. So yeah, I still want to give that one a try. Maybe I'll try to get to it in September, but again, I'm running out of time. And then I recommended a Stephen Graham Jones in my last video, and I think he writes a ton of slashers. Like I know Night at the Mannequins is a slasher. That is short and unscripted, so that's a possibility for me as well. But one that I bought on release day and haven't read yet is My Heart is a Chainsaw. I went out especially to grab this, so excited about it. Read the first chapter, thought the first chapter was excellent, and then just never continued on with it. That is just my way. And there is a sequel out to this as well. And it says it's an homage to slasher films that also manages to defy and transcend the genre. So yeah, that is one I just have to read. I am kicking myself. I can't believe I've only read one Stephen Graham Jones at this point. And I think the point of October and the Halloween season is to kind of scare yourself a little bit. And the only thing that will really scare me in fiction is clowns. I will get a little bit creeped out by certain things, but like actual terrified nightmares, clowns. Clowns, hate them. I'm going to an event on Friday and it's about facing your phobias, and I said if there are clowns there, it's not happening. I'm not going anywhere near them, but I will read about them. And even the cover of this one is just giving me chills, and it's The Cotton Candy Massacre. I haven't looked too much into it. It must be a slasher that takes place at a carnival and there are clowns, but I am preparing myself. I do want to be a little bit scared during Halloween. I think that is kind of the point. And then finishing it out strong with Dark Academia, I have one that I actually own. Is Vita Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko, and this is translated. The authors are Ukrainian, and I have heard that this is the weirdest Dark Academia out there, and I am up for it. Anytime somebody talks about this, it sounds weirder and weirder to me, and it just gets me more intrigued to read it. I know a couple people who have read this on my recommendation, which is funny to me because I haven't actually read it yet, but I love that, just me showing it on camera and talking about it a little bit, because it just really does sound that weird, and I feel like it's for a very specific audience, and that audience is me. So that is my #1 priority within this genre. And then a book that just came out is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. I have a friend who's reading it now, is obsessed with it. Apparently the romance in this is really good. I think you can tell from this cover that it has a dark academia angle to it. It will be my first book from Ava Reed. Of all the books that she's put out, this is definitely the one that calls to me the most. And the last book on this list on my Fall TBR is Curious Tides by Pascal Lassalle. This is said to be like a mix of Ninth House and A Deadly Education. It says that it's a gorgeous dark academia fantasy following a teen mage who must unravel the truth behind the secret society that may be involved in her classmates' deaths. And let's just be honest, that cover is stunning. So yes, those are the 3 dark academias on my list. That is my entire fall TBR. Again, I know I'm not going to get to any of these, but if I can get to 1 or 2 within each category, I will be thrilled, and I would feel like I have lived the fall season right. So if you have read any of these, let me know what you thought about them down below, which ones I should really prioritize and get to. Let me know your favorite books within any of these categories in general. Thank you again for your support. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.